Have you ever been in a situation where you've missed the point? A man calls 000 and says, "Help, my wife is in labour and we don't know what to do." And the person on the end of the line says, "Okay, just stay calm. Is this her first child?" And the man says, "No, this is her husband." Missing the point. A woman is riding in a 2-seat aircraft when the pilot has a fatal heart attack. She radios the tower that assures her that they are experienced with this kind of situation and will be able to help her land the plane. They ask her for a height and position and she responds, "I'm 5'4" and in the front seat." Missing the point. I wonder if you and I have ever done that. I'm sure that we have. So just what is missing the point? It is to misunderstand the essence or crux of something. Sometimes we might say to someone that we're in conversation with, "That's not what I meant at all. You missed the point of everything that I've just said." So it is a failure to understand the important part of something. Many of you would remember the film The Life of Brian. Of course, the film tells the story of Brian Cohen, a young Hebrew who is worshipped mistakenly by a group of people who think he is the Messiah. Brian, of course, is well-meaning but clumsy and ultimately crucified by the Romans. And even though initially the film was banned in Ireland and Norway and it created great controversy around the world, what was the point of the film? Many people apparently forgot to notice that Brian was not Jesus. Indeed, the 2 opening scenes in the film make this point very, very clear. And the writers of the film were satirising the trappings of blind religious zeal, such as in the scene where a group of zealots perceive a lost sandal and take it to be a sign of the divine. Missing the point. As a school chaplain, of course, for 35 years, the cardinal sin in an educational institution is to miss the point. And in the scripture reading from John's Gospel that Graham read to us this morning, Jesus, of course, is portrayed by John at the critical centre of a nexus of social, political and religious interactions, and all but one person seemed to miss the point. I don't often take a text, but I think this one is really interesting because we can see what lessons we can draw from an examination of the characters in the story. Notice, first of all, there is Judas Iscariot, a champion of the oppressed, and of course, including apparently himself, most of all. Judas proves that good causes collect all kinds of motives, even if they are Christian causes. Wrong motives, of course, do not exclude anyone from working for a good cause. They only exclude them from getting the point. Over recent days, we've heard Pope Francis condemn sexual abuse by clergy in the Catholic Church. And yet bishops who turned a blind eye or covered up clergy in their diocese still remain in active ministry, missing the point. And of course, in politics, we have a government minister thinking it would be a bit rough to deport a young woman with no criminal history, yet it's all right to hold dozens of young children with no criminal history at all to indefinite detention on Nauru. Somewhere in all of this, someone is missing the point. The principle behind the Judas motive, then, is to pretend to be supplying a corrective to human need and suffering, but is motivated by self-interest and therefore destined to betrayal. "Why was this perfume," he said, "not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" In this, Judas purports to be providing for others what is really only a means to the end of relieving his own frustrations, satisfying his own needs, whether for power and manipulation or for personal gratification and the comfortable illusion that he is serving other people. Causes, even those done in the name of Jesus, collect all kinds of motives, and some are swollen with betrayal. And like Judas, we will be more concerned with the cost of the perfume rather than why Mary did the act and what it did for her Lord and what it meant. In many ways, we would call Judas today a narcissist if we were to find his personality type. He was characterized by a grandiose sense of self-importance and fantasies of unlimited success. And people with this condition, being a narcissist, crave attention from other people but demonstrate few warm feelings towards others. They exploit others and seek favours that they do not return. And often they overestimate their abilities and inflate their achievements. They assume that other people attribute the same value to their own achievements and are surprised when the praise that they expect to roll in from others and feel that they deserve is not forthcoming. And then, of course, there was Martha. What would we do without Martha to domesticate the Protestant work ethic for us? Here she is doing dutiful and good work for Jesus, feeding not the poor but him. And she highlights the fact that we can miss the point out of the very goodness of our own hearts. Even if we are conscious of our motives and attend to them with critical diligence, we can still miss the point. We can serve on many committees, lead many organisations, serve the community with passion. But that is not the guarantee that we will understand why we are serving and to whom. For Martha shows us that being faithful to one's duty, however honourable that may be, is no guarantee for getting the point. How many of us involved in the life of the church think that busyness is the defining characteristic of our faith? Over the years, I've been involved with many churches where there has been something on every night of the week. Young people's activities on Saturday night, 2 services and children's activities on Sundays. And of course, you hear the old adage, it is better to wear out than to rust out. Sometimes our busyness in the church is a way of avoiding our own spiritual development and journey because we're too busy to develop the spiritual skills and create the time where our spirituality and faith can be nurtured and enhanced. You know, the church then preaches about the importance of family life and then gives us no time to pursue it. Martha, of course, is Judas's motivational opposite, showing us how difficult it is to feed this life and to get the point that the spiritual life is more important than service and busyness. And in the background of this story that John tells us about Jesus is Lazarus, a silent symbol of the point not to be missed, a symbol that is not this life that is all important, but rather Christ's transformation of it that gets to the point. Lazarus is a symbol of Christ's ability to create of that which is dead and unresponsive something which is alive, responsive, re-energized, and renewed. The point cannot rest with this life, because in itself is pointless. In the Jewish scriptures of 2nd Isaiah chapter 40, the writer echoes this point. He says, "All people are grass. Their constancy is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, and when the breath of the Lord blows upon it." And in the Buddhist scriptures, the Buddha says, "What is born will die. What has been gathered will be dispersed. And what has been accumulated will be exhausted. And what has been built up will collapse. And what has been high will be brought low." And so much of our anguish and difficulty in this life is because we believe that things will always stay the same. But this is the paradox of impermanence. Like the sky or the earth, no matter how much everything around us may change or collapse, they endure. Even though we go through shattering emotional crises or our whole life seems to be disintegrating around us, the earth is still there and the sky is still there. And Lazarus' silence is a symbol of the hiddenness of this transformational point. No chorus or solemn or holy assembly can make it more true or make it true for you and me. We have to discover it for ourselves in the silence of our own tomb. And when we become aware that we've been wrapped up for so many years of our life in the grave clothes of this life. And then, of course, there is Mary. The writer of John's Gospel actually names her. But in the other Gospels, she is unidentified and even in one called a sinner. Mary, with total disregard for the environment of envy and suspicion inspired in the religious dignitaries that were around her since Lazarus' death and awakening, and in diametrical opposition to both Judas and Martha, Mary moves not to celebrate the life and work of Jesus or to serve the poor, but to celebrate to his face his death to this life. And so she had gained the point. In letting go of this life, she had gained the point. And while everyone around, whether for good motive or ill, was celebrating and preserving this life, Mary's extravagant perfume was wasted on the celebration of his death. This is a truly liberated person for all of us to recognise and wonder at. Mary is willing to let go, it appears. She's willing to accept his entrance into death. And she corresponds to something in me that can gradually come to accept, to receive death as part of life. It is such an essential task. But the surprising thing is that it is possible. One can accept and one can let go. And as the odour of Mary's extravagance filled the room, Jesus, in his movement from life to death and life anew, was to give everything deemed precious its proper shape, its central point, his transforming power over this life. And to claim this transforming power, we may have to move against the currents of our time, to critique the causes that are around us and the motives that are behind them, and even doubt the dutiful good that well-meaning people do in his name. But if the odour of our conviction stinks to some people and seems strange to others, it is only because we do not want to miss the point. Today, as we celebrate St. Michael's Day, we need to affirm the primary task facing the Christian church today of expressing and articulating a spirituality and a faith that doesn't insult our intelligence, that separates the extraneous from the essential, the timeless God experience from the time-warped God explanations of the past. This Church of St. Michael's has been able not only to deconstruct old religious patterns which have proved to be inadequate in a modern world, but to develop new visions, articulate new models of ministry, and to chart new solutions, because you don't want to miss the point of why you were here. May the blessings of God, who is the ground of being, be with you all today. God, divine presence of all creation, may our senses be awakened to your presence in the beauty of this land. May our imagination be awakened to your suffering in the cries of this land. And may our hearts be awakened to your compassion in the peoples of this land. And may our consciences be awakened to your commitment to the poor of this land and to the dispossessed. May our whole being be awakened by your eternal Spirit enfolding this land. Amen. And our recessional hymn, as we stand to sing together, O thou who camest from above.